This is where opportunity is. The platform is there. The tech is there.
And we've been able to achieve a 400 to 1500x reduction in on-chain fees.
Majority of the people that get into this space is because of the financial return.
Unless you want to work 24/7 and be a slave of your own business idea or product idea, don't do it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Nalikes Podcast. I'm Talha Asif, your host, and in each episode we bring you insightful conversations with the founders and builders who are shaping the future of Web3. Our goal here is to educate and inspire the founders by bringing on other founders who are building successful products in the Web3 space. Today's guests are Karthik and JP. They are the founders of Honeycomb Protocol. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having us
Yeah,
here.
we're doing good. Thank you.
Amazing. So Karthik and JP, my goal here in the next 30 to 40 minutes is pick your brain and figure out what are you working on, why are you working on it, and how do you continue to build a successful startup. But before that, do you mind giving short introductions on what's your background before Web3 and crypto?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Before Web3, I was in the nuclear industry as a design engineer. I originally studied mechanical engineering, and then around 2020, I switched over to software engineering, and in 2021, jumped into Solana development. So that's kind of my background.
Amazing.
Yeah, and my background has been in product over the last almost, I guess, a little over 20 years. I've been in crypto since 2018. I joined through joining the Civic team, the chief product officer at Civic too. So I've been seeing quite a bit of the ups and downs. Worked at different type of tech companies, from Yahoo to agriculture tech, going through entertainment and whatnot over those 2 decades. And before that, I worked at IBM doing marketing, and my background before that was industrial engineering. That's what I went to school for back in Peru, and I moved to the US 20 years ago for an MBA that I did in Michigan too. So been around for a little bit.
Very nice. One thing I like to ask the founders on this podcast is the first moment that they met with Web3, like that aha moment. So can you guys expand more on that? Like, when was that moment where you understood what Web3 is? Because for me, it was one of my friends showed me a picture of an ape and told me that this monkey is worth millions of dollars. And I was like, how does that work? So what was that moment for you? Like, okay, how does this work? Or was it something you've been there since the Bitcoin days, or what you mentioned 2018? So what was that first moment where you understood that what is this crypto thing?
Karthik, I guess for me, the first moment was with Bitcoin, probably in 2016 or so. I was working on LifeLock then and thinking about the identity problem and how do you create an identity system, some form of way that you could protect people from identity theft. So as I started to learn more about crypto and decentralization, that was kind of like, oh, okay, there could be something here. But then it was something that not very people understood. How do you get into it? So then it kind of started fading a little bit on the background. But then in 2018 and 17, when I was talking to Vinny, the co-founder of Civic, he's a Bitcoin OG and whatnot. We started talking about decentralization. How can we make that a reality? So that really was the way that I got into crypto. It was around how do we build decentralized identity, right? So we actually were issuing attestations on a Bitcoin blockchain back in 2018, right? So and then my journey has been around product building. I've never really been a big trader. I don't think I'm a very good trader anyway, so don't take any advice from me. Besides, go follow Karthik. He's much more advanced when it comes to those things.
Got it. JP, one question here. So why were you working on identity solutions? I mean, was there a personal reason that you were trying to solve, or?
Yeah. Identity, and I think it translates a lot into the gaming stuff that we are working on today, is it's so core and fundamental to everything that we do in our everyday life. even if we don't really think about it, right? Whenever you access an online service, there is an identity component. It's your username and password. It's your Google account that they use to log in, X, your wallet. When you connect to any kind of DApp, DeFi application, whatever it is, that is your identity. And it's necessary in order to be able to link your digital assets with you, right? So it's fundamental. Then think about it in the real world. Whatever you do, if you drive a car, you need a driver's license. That is part of your identity. So everything that we do requires you knowing who you're interacting with in some shape or form. So that's always been super interesting to me. Ever since my Yahoo days back in 2005, Yahoo was the biggest web property at that point, right? And Yahoo had a fundamental business around identity. You had the Yahoo profiles, and that was a huge, massive thing internal to Yahoo. That's what personalized your experience. That's what created, showed you better ads, right? Tracked you everywhere that you went and created a much more tailored experience. Then with the identity theft problem here in the US, it's billions and billions of money that gets lost around identity theft. And the opportunity there was pretty huge to fix that problem.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And we'll get to the gaming part, but I want to hear from Karthik. What was your introduction to Web3? I want you to go in more detail because there might be people watching that aren't in crypto. So I want them to be, because most of the people that I've come across think this is a scam. Or even my mother is like, what are you working on? She's like, aren't you doing something shady? I'm like, no, I'm building software. So what's your that reason that got you into Web3?
Yeah. So mine was pretty simple. Like I found Bitcoin in like 2015, 2016. And I was playing like a lot of video games at that time. And to me, it just felt like it was natural to use like Bitcoin rather than like, honestly, dollars. It just felt weird. Like in a video game, I can transfer gold from like player A to player B, and that's value being transferred. But if I want to transfer value in the real world, like if I have to go to a bank, do a wire transfer, wait for 5 days, like it just doesn't make any sense. So that was my kind of aha moment where I was like, okay, this could be, something pretty big, as time goes on. And I've been following it ever since, and then, naturally progressed back into gaming.
Got it. So you're playing these games and you face this problem. I personally face this problem as well. I used to play this game called FIFA, and I earned millions of coins in that game. And when I was a student, I wanted to make money, right? So the way I used to make money is that I used to make money in FIFA and then sell these accounts on eBay and stuff. And the way they used to send money is through PayPal. But then sometimes EA Sports would just ban my account and I had to return the money. So when I figured, so that was the first thing. And the second thing was that my mother was like, you will never make money through gaming. So when in 21 I saw Axie Infinity, both of these problems were being solved. I was like, okay, something is happening. Amazing. So Karthik, you got into this space through gaming, and then JP through more like identity thing. What was that moment when you guys came together and thought, okay, we need to solve this problem in the gaming industry, which is through Honeycomb Protocol? But before we talk about Honeycomb Protocol, I want you to tell that transition and that the problem that you're trying to solve with this protocol.
Yeah. So I think, so when me and JP met, we had a lot of commonalities. For example, we were both deep in the NFT ecosystem, and we saw like, I think NFTs as being kind of like a way for individuals to identify with, but also it has this like store of value, right? It can be traded. Nobody can like seize it from you. Like a gaming company can't come in and like block you out of your NFT, right? So I think we vibed on that really well. And then from where it progressed into Honeycomb Protocol, we were, operating an engineering firm, and we were learning a lot about Solana development. And we were finding a lot of issues within development and how we can then later on streamline that, right, for the developer experience and make it as easy as possible to build games.
I have a question here. Why were you operating a development firm? What was the reason?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had launched a project called Soul Patrol, which went viral at the end of 2021. And this was like the first raffle on Solana. And after that, like a lot of people just asked, they gave us work requests. They're like, hey, can you build this project? we saw it as a great opportunity to, one, fulfill these orders, but also learn a lot about the development landscape and get really deep into it.
Got it. So you're saying you launched a... Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry. It's like, and then when you think about the lack of engineers in Solana, and we truly believe in the power of Solana. It was like a no-brainer. Okay, how do we help the ecosystem grow too, right? And I think the best way is to partner with founders and help them build their product.
Got
So
it.
that's a little bit how it all started.
Got it. And why specifically Solana? I mean, is there any specific insight that you guys took a bet on Solana, and do you suggest other founders to build on Solana as well? Because that is a question that new founders ask. Okay, which chain to build on? Most is like, they're like, okay, I'll go on the chain that has the most users, or I'll go on the chain that has the best technology. I'll go on the chain which is going to be there for the longest. So what was the reason that you guys decided to build on Solana, and what framework can founders use to decide a chain to build on?
Yeah. So we were working on Solana University with Foundation in 2022. And like, this is like the top question from students that we'd get at events is like, what chain should I work on? And I always, I'm very agnostic. I want the students to figure it out themselves, right? And find their own path. But the reason why I chose Solana, so I read the white paper back in the crypto bear winter of 2019. And that's when I saw the power of it, which was high performant, low, extremely high performant compared to Ethereum, which was, just churning out it was an okay TPS at that time, but it made sense that, when, for example, when Uniswap launches in like 2021, it has huge amount of congestion, right? That was probably the first indication that like, okay, this might not be enough performance, right? But you could see those trends pretty early on. So what really gravitated me was the high performance, high throughput, and the ability to have very low gas fees, so that it's accessible to anyone in the world, not just the US and European population, but actually, all the way into like India and Pakistan, right?
Very nice.
Yeah, to me, I had already been building on Bitcoin and Ethereum. So
you've been building on Bitcoin even before that? Tell us more about that.
So back in 2018, Civic had a mobile app. That mobile app was your decentralized identity store. So you would store all your identity information on that mobile device. Civic would never store your information. And after the identity got verified, we would issue an attestation on chain on a Bitcoin blockchain, so that then you could reuse that. So think about the concept of verifiable credentials and whatnot. Well, all of that implemented in a decentralized way. You need some form of source of truth, right? So we would issue that attestation that this is the hash of that identity information. Where do you store that? How you put it decentralized? Bitcoin, right? And that's how we started issuing attestations. And then when that identity was going to be reused, we would just check on chain.
So how was it being stored? Was it being stored on sats, or how was it being stored at that
time? Well, we can get into that, but we have some patents around what we call chain off around it, and storing a hash of that attestation on Bitcoin then allowed us to come back to be able to reshare that identity and verify that it hadn't been tampered with, if that makes sense.
Very interesting.
So then we went into building an identity marketplace on Ethereum, and then Ethereum became basically unusable when you look at gas fees and whatnot. Conceptually, that's what you wanted. You wanted a programmable blockchain that could execute applications. So that's exactly what you needed. But then you couldn't scale. And at that point, we actually had a crypto wallet on Civic. So we shut down that crypto wallet because it just became too expensive to run it, because we were actually issuing smart contract wallets at that point. So there's all that. We had like a payment mechanism where you could pay in crypto and also prove that you were 18 years or older. So now you could buy alcohol from a vending machine and things like that. So we created a bunch of interesting use cases from there. And then, after we were exploring other chains and met Anatoly and learned more about Solana, it kind of all makes sense, right? Okay, this is the chain, his vision, the way that he's going about it, and then the community that was starting to build up. I think that's one of the key things that I love about Solana. It is the biggest social experiment out there, right? I don't like when you think about Solana as your master DAO and then each project as a sub DAO within their ecosystem. And I've been thinking about this for a while, especially after you go to Breakpoint. When you go to Breakpoint, you really realize what the Solana ecosystem and community is about. And it's one community, right? It's not fragmented. It's all under the Solana umbrella. And then you have all these projects that are building either tooling and applications on top of that. And each one has its own community, right? But all the developers are integrated within the Solana umbrella. And it's not that you have to go try to figure out this chain, this other chain, and all within like the EVM ecosystem. Now you have all these L2s. Okay, well, that starts getting complicated. So that really drove a lot of the reason why we ended up staying. And now we made our main platform and only platform at Honeycomb to be Solana and say, okay, this is where the opportunity is. The platform is there. The tech is there. Now the tooling is where it's lacking. We need to create tools to help developers to build on top of Solana because you need applications in order to bring consumers, right? Wallets and trading and DeFi is not going to bring you the next billion users. 1 billion people don't really want to do all that stuff. Let's just be honest. Maybe there's going to be a few 100 million people that do want to do all that stuff. Yes. And I think a lot of the tooling that we have is actually adequate, but not for bringing the masses. So how do you bring the masses? You need to create real applications. You need a dating app. You need a lot of games. You need email. You need a lot of these things that you just use on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's where, gaming is where we all gravitated. I played games on Atari 2600 back when I was a kid, and that was the console of the time. It's not that was a retro console. That was the console. So I still play to this day. I love retro gaming and whatnot.
Got it. Very interesting. So if I were to summarize, the reason you guys chose Solana is, first of all, the community, because I started with the EVM ecosystem. We started mainly on Ethereum. But when I started, going to these events and I met some people from the super team, I realized that the vibes are different. I think that's the right word. The vibes are different. There's community, and then so you guys are building because of community, because of the tech that is building, and it's scalable. And you have seen that before that, like other EVMs are not that scalable. And what you're trying to do is that in order to bring the masses, there has to be application. Then you're taking focusing on one part of it, which is gaming. So we stopped our discussion on you guys were running a dev studio, a dev shop, because you had built a successful project and other people wanted what you were doing. Amazing. And again, a service-based business in the Web3 space makes sense because that's what we are doing. But one thing that I personally think a lot about, and many of the founders do, is the ideas to work on. Like, how do you pick an idea to work on? In the previous episodes, I've had founders who have raised millions of dollars, and the advice varies. Some people say, let it cook. Some people say, solve your own problem. Some people say, solve someone else's problem. And there is a lot of, because most of the founders that I work with have no clue on what they're doing. They don't know how their project will work on. So I want to ask you guys, how did you finally figure out what idea to work? Like, how to work on this Honeycomb protocol? And what is the conviction that keeps you going? Because it's hard to build a startup.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think there's like two main things when you're picking like an idea. This isn't like applicable to just Honeycomb. So like one is like you have to figure out what the demand is, right? If you can find the demand or figure out where the demand is, that's like the first step. And then the second step is like building a high quality product, because you could have 3 founders that all find the demand at the same time, and you have 3 products, but what is the chance that you will, outcompete? So the quality needs to be the best, right? So finding demand and then the
How
highest
do you
quality
find
product.
how do you find the demand? I want to get right into it.
Yeah.
I want to give people actionable steps, because trust me, Karthik, there are so many founders who don't know how to pick an idea, right? And
Yeah.
again, they just waste their money, and they're stuck in this limbo state of raising money or acquiring users, and they end up with nothing. So when we work with founders, because we are also a service, we're like, first, why are you working on this? And if there isn't a clear enough reason that will keep you going, we suggest them they don't build that. So how do you figure out that demand? Is it something by getting involved in communities, or is there a specific method? How do you figure out what's the demand?
I think it's like a combination of stuff. So one is like you have to be like me and JP are like very deep in the Solana ecosystem. Within like 5 to 10 minutes of news coming out, we know what the latest update is. So we have a very good pulse or reading on what is currently out there, and like what are all the scenarios in the future that things could unfold as, right? So one of the things with finding demand, at least in my opinion, like the easiest way to find it is be saturated and then have a lot of experience in that category or field that you're in. For us, like we went into like being like an engineering firm, it was really nice because we got very specialized on our area of expertise, and we were able to now work with projects and see kind of how these founders they found their demand or their segment. And then just with the sheer amount of projects, we were finally able to say, like, yeah, this is something that later on, when everything lines up, this is going to be the demand. Because it's not the demand right now either. Like the demand right now is usually what people try to predict, but it's actually like figuring out all the scenarios of the future and then finding the highest probability one and then timing it so that your product launches right when the demand comes in. Like a lot of things, right, are involved.
What are your thoughts on that, JP? I mean, you have more experience in building products. Yeah, I'll repeat my question. So JP, what are your thoughts on how founders can figure out what ideas to work on, and what was that reason where you guys decided, okay, we want to work on Honeycomb Protocol, and what is the conviction that keeps you going?
Yeah, on the what to build, I think I always ask, what are you passionate about? What is something that really motivates you? Because being a founder is really difficult. And unless you want to work 24/7 and be a slave of your own business idea or product idea, don't do it. Don't do it. I would say don't do it unless you can be fully, you have full conviction on, okay, this is something that I want to work on, that I'm going to enjoy working on. So you need to like it. It needs to be something that you can be passionate at a personal level, in my opinion. It cannot just be, I'm just gonna build something that it's gonna make me money. No, that's just not gonna work out too well. So that's, I think, one. So find that one thing that you can just enjoy doing, researching, learning about 24 hours a day. That's number one. Now, how did we find the Honeycomb Protocol idea, and why was that? Well, I personally always wanted to work in gaming. For ABC reason, I could never make it work. I could never figure out, because I ended up moving from one place, the company I joined that was supposed to be doing mobile gaming, we ended up not doing that, and we pivoted to all these other things. So we also, for some reason or another, always the gaming part just became completely lost. So when we were building all these projects and working on this Solana things, so we're like, okay, finally I can work on gaming stuff. And as we were discussing these things, we're with Karthik and Gulam, our other co-founder and CTO, who's just an amazing human being too. I was like, okay, this is a problem that needs to be solved. Games are never going to go away unless something happens with humanity. Nobody's going to stop playing games, right? And it's fun. It's also fun. There's a big problem that needs to be solved, right? So that's where you go and like, okay, what is the opportunity that Karthik was talking about? Gaming, Web3 gaming, there is a big opportunity there that we see, right? Owning your assets, creating new gaming experiences, giving control back to the player, right? There's so many things that we can build using Web3 and start changing the way an industry works, that's kind of like, oh, okay, so there is a big opportunity here. It's going to be very, very difficult, but the more difficult it is, the bigger the opportunity ultimately. If it's a simple problem to solve, it's a business, it's a lifestyle business. It's not building like the next billion, trillion company. That's ultimately what we want to achieve, right? How do you create that massive project that then starts changing the way an industry works?
Got it. So you said something that you have to be really passionate about that problem. So there is this guy, Naval Ravikant, if you know who that is. He says that find something that feels like play to you and work to other people, and you'll be successful. Amazing. So the summary, I mean, what I'm trying to do is like find takeaways for the people watching, that how they can pick an idea. And so far, what I've concluded is that first you have to solve your own problem or find something you're passionate about. I think that is safe today. And second is that the insight that you guys have, you were involved in the communities deeply, just like how you said, right? Anything happens in Solana, you know it. So I'm curious, how does that happen? But we'll leave that for now. But you're involved in communities, you're talking to the other community members and customers, so you know what they want. So if someone wants to work an idea, they need to get involved in the space or community they are in, and then they need to have passion, right? It's not just like you said, right? If we find something, okay, we can make money, because that's what happened in crypto. I want to launch a meme coin, I want to launch an NFT project, I want to copy what this Pong Pod did, I want to copy what, these hamster combat. Because the good thing that you guys have been in this position as well as service provider, you find out what people are looking for. And these days, everyone just wants a clone of hamster combat for some reason. But that's good. Amazing. I mean, it's good, right? We can make money with it, but we won't grow the space further. And then I think the mindset needs to be changed, because majority of the people that get into the space is because of the financial returns. I mean, I haven't met a single person is that at least some part of them got into the space because they wanted to make money. They saw their friend was making money or someone was making money. They're like, okay, let me get in. But some people that get in, they're like, okay, there are bigger problems that can be solved. But majority stays with the same mindset. We just want to keep increasing our bags. Amazing. So this is how you guys were able to figure out how to solve your own problem. All right. Now, how did you guys start? And again, now I heard from you that you guys transitioned from purely a service model to a product model. So how was that transition for you guys? And how did you make it happen? Because there are a lot of things, right? There is fundraising, there is go-to-market, acquiring customers, building the product. So how has that journey been? But before that, if you can explain, like dumb it down, what is Honeycomb Protocol? For people like me, just dumb it down.
Yeah, so just quick overview of Honeycomb Protocol. So the idea is to make it as easy as possible for any developer to build games on the Solana blockchain network. And the way we achieve this is we have a very simple SDK. So you can just jump into our documentation and then start pulling different modules and just throw them right into your game. For example, like I want my character to be a CNFT in the game. You go into our character manager and then you can just initiate it right there. Let's say you want all of your resources in your game to be CNFTs. We support that. And then also we have recipe trees. So like you go and you like mine some ore, you get that ore, and then you can refine it into a bar, turn it into a sword, and then you can equip that back to your character. So our character manager has an assembler that will swap out that trait, just like how almost like NFT traits itself works, right? It's very almost yes, in one-to-one almost, how like traits within an NFT are very similar to like a player equipment loadout in a game. And then we also made it like very, very cheap. So we're the first protocol built fully on state compression. Like one of the points I brought up why I chose Solana was because of the accessibility, right? I saw like Solana being something that everyone in the world can use. However, in games, it can get pretty expensive, right? So we needed a way to like make it as cheap as possible. So we're the first protocol on state compression. And we've been able to achieve a 400 to 1500x reduction in on-chain fees. Just to give an example, 1 million of our player profiles that are on-chain cost 9 SOL. So 1 million accounts essentially equivalent. On-chain accounts is just 9 SOL, and that cost does not go up. Without compression, that cost would increase as more data went into each of those accounts. But with compression, it's a fixed rate. Yeah, and it's 1500x cheaper than normal.
Very interesting. JB, you want to add something?
I guess ultimately, right, creating that end-to-end developer experience is our mission in life, right? That great end-to-end developer experience. How do you get a Web2, Web3 developer to say, okay, I want to build a game and I want it to be a Web3 game because it's all this great stuff, or I just want to build a game and I need these core game mechanics like player profiles, character managers, resources, recipes. So that's our sweet spot, is how do we provide the tooling and game primitives to developers to bring in whatever game engine they want to use, to then deploy it on Solana, right? To get that scale, to get all those additional benefits, and then use all the other mechanisms like wallets, wallet abstractions, on ramps, off ramps. But all of those pieces, there's already, those problems have been solved. But the actual gameplay, that's our sweet spot within Honeycomb.
Got it. Makes sense. So from what I have understood is that you're focusing purely on developers. So either they are like developers who are building on gaming things like Unreal, Unity, and so on. Then they understand what Web3 is. So you don't have to explain them why you want to build an NFT, why you need to have a token, right? But I'm a part of a gaming community here. Like, it's a really big community. And when we got into NFTs, they're like, okay, these guys are scammers, stay away from them. So they are a very big set of developers who don't know what crypto is. So how are you first of all, are you focusing on them? And if yes or no, if yes, how are you convincing them? Because the first challenge is to get them to come into Web3, right? Use this technology. So from what I can see, there's a lot of friction, and many other projects or products face the same problem. So how are you going to solve that, or how are you solving that?
Yeah, I think like there's a data point that like the average gamer now is like 34 years old, and like the traditional revenue models, they're not really like working, right? In games, like you can't trick a 34-year-old to take his mom's credit card and buy some loot boxes. So we need new revenue streams, right? Because if those are trending down, that's not good for the industry or for indie game developers or for any games, right? And one of the ways, like I always I explain it, is like, look, you have these new opportunities to generate revenue for your game through like royalties of each of those items being transacted, through in-game token that can be also traded on like a DEX, for example. That's what Web3 unlocks. It unlocks new streams for you to monetize on your game that you're making. So
yeah, I think to add to that, it really is about education. We can't do anything about the scams and whatnot, right? Because that's just the reality of part of our industry. That's just where it is. But I think just constantly educating developers on, yes, there is that. However, that's not what it means to you. This is what it means to you. Like Karthik is saying, you can do this, you get this, these are the benefits. And I think as the global industry regulation starts to shift, so with the ETFs in the US, with MiCA coming online in the EU, with all this, like China hopefully opening it up back to crypto, right? So I think there's going to be this change, because there are scams in the existing financial industry today, right? They are not as published, I guess, sometimes, but we're also in an echo chamber us when they are in this space, right? And that also creates a little bit of a problem. But I think also as developers and indie studios start to see how bigger companies like Atari, for example, right? Atari just have this Atari X, the Atari Club. They just launched their arcade.fun. They're using Base, right? As that. And you can play Asteroids. If you ever played Atari 2600, it was a very popular game. There. So they're going to have their whole vintage collection of games over there, right? So I think It's going to take time for developers to see it, but now I think now we're finally seeing good indicators of reputable companies using crypto and Web3 how it should have been used all along.
Makes sense. You guys know Yatsu, the founder of Animoca Brands, right? So I was on one of his talks, and he mentioned that in 2008, when before the iPhone or the Android phones came out, people thought that gaming has reached its peak; it can't go any further. And then when the iPhone came out and took the market to a couple of billions, and now he was saying that we are at the same position where Web3 would unlock that next level of growth, because now mobile gaming has reached its peak. And one thing you were saying, right? You can't trick people to buy cards, and now games feel like I don't play games anymore, but I see my younger brother play the mobile games. They're like just ads, and everyone is doing the same thing over and over again. So I personally believe, and hearing you guys, that Web3 could be that unlock the gaming market to go up. But my question here is that would it be new games that would unlock that, or would it be existing big games, like EA Sports, for example? Because I think if EA were to integrate NFTs and crypto, that would change. What are your thoughts on that? Should existing gaming companies take this seriously so they can stay relevant, or it would be new games that are coming out? What do you think?
It's going to be a combination of both. I don't see it happening any other way. Ubisoft did some tests with an NFT drop a couple years ago that backfired miserably because it just felt more like a money grab and not really changing the fundamentals of what it means to be a Web3 game or what it means to have crypto and Web3 into your game. So of course, I think we're going to see new games like Star Atlas coming online pretty soon. That's should be a AAA game. There are some games already starting to come out, but there's going to be this strong push. And Animoca, like you mentioned, they are actually working with a lot of game studios. They're pushing the Web 2 to Web 3 migration. So that I think it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of when, not a matter of if. Right? All these big game studios they've tried certain things. They're just not ready to start making those changes because also consumers are not requesting it. That's what's also going to start happening as gamers start to demand, oh, I want to own my asset. I want this. They're going to just have to start changing their business models.
Got it. When I got into crypto, I just like I was telling you before we started the podcast, I was very inspired by Axie Infinity, what they were doing, right? They were creating a whole new economy for people in these third world countries where they can earn from the game and survive. So what are your thoughts on that kind of gaming model? Because from what I think, those gaming models are not sustainable. So my first question is, what are your thoughts on those gaming models, like play to earn, because that was a very big hype, but it died off. And which company or which game has by far built the best Web3 game? Like what have they done right? Because there's so many things that come into it, right? There's tokenomics, there is the game itself, and then there is the user onboarding and the reducing the friction. So these are my two questions. Like, what are your thoughts on these play to earn model? Because that is something that attracts people, right? Just like you said, you can tell developers that there's new ways where you can earn money. Similarly, you can attract users by telling them that they can earn. And we have a really recent example of hamster combat. Even I remember one of my family members who have no relation to crypto. He doesn't even know what is Bitcoin. I saw him tapping his screen with hamster combat. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the play to earn primitive is like one that's pretty unique because you can obviously let people like now monetize while they're gaming. But I feel like it's just like a stepping stone until we discover like the true utility or the true like sweet spot, right? So like every like successful game like Axie Infinity, it's like a case study that gets us a little bit closer to, hey, this works, this doesn't work, let's not do this, let's do this, right? Like Axie had a really unique breeding system and then like a PvP system as well. This made it like very successful and made the economy within the game very like vibrant, you could say. We've seen these type of economies though in traditional Web 2 games as well. It's not something that's new in Web 3. It was just new because of the like play to earn model, right? So I think what we learned from Axie, those primitives will then get brought into like this cycle of games, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what comes out.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I think the play to earn, to your point, is hard to sustain, right? And it kind of exploded right now. You need to build the whole flywheel, I think, in a different way. So those are the new mechanics that we're going to start exploring. Like you have the 404 or what's called like the hybrid NFTs, right? That now you have an NFT with a token. Okay, so what does that mean? How do you now use your currency to then interact with in-game items? I think that's kind of like the next way to see it, because a lot of like, oh, there's just a player, it's just my character. But I think it needs to start evolving towards in-game assets. How do those interact with the currency? And the evolution of making the NFT be much more of a dynamic and morphing digital asset is, I think, one of those new mechanics that we are going to be exploring over the next 6, 12, 18 months and see what that really means. Interop between games, I just don't see that as being realistic. Everybody's like, oh, I can use my sword on game A and game B. I just don't think that that's really what the gamer wants. At the end of the day, I don't think that's what the developer wants, because now you have to worry about how would this item work in my game, and it's just creating too much overhead. That why would I want to bring my sword from one game to the other, or my skin from one game to the other? They have, one is a pixel one is a line art, one is this. It's like, why? Right? But if I can trade my assets between games, that's much more interesting. Okay, that skin becomes maybe a sword on this other game. And then you keep the games, well defined and structured. That, I think, is also where we need to experiment and explore more, right? How do you trade between games? So I think there's a lot of opportunities there to explore.
Got it. So you mentioned something about tokenomics, right? But let's say you guys are providing the infrastructure which can make the development process easier for game developers. But what about the tokenomics part? Because again, if they don't get that right, because you've seen that some games have 2 tokens, one game has 1 token, and then what happens when they don't spend enough time building the tokenomics right? The chart goes down, and then the community sentiment gets attached to that token. And then if the token is not doing well, people feel that, okay, we are not progressing. So what can founders or game developers who are building Web3 games take away from you guys, because you guys have experience? Like, how can they approach tokenomics? Because my advice is don't launch a token unless it's absolutely necessary. So what is your advice on that?
Yeah, I mean, me personally, very similar. Like in Honeycomb Protocol, we have 2 types of tokens. One is a permissionless token. So it's just a straight up SPL token, like any other like tradable token. The other one is unique. So that one's a permission token. And this was originally created for like regulated markets. But in a game, it shows up like in your Phantom wallet as like a normal token. In the game you're playing, like you can trade it, exchange it. The only caveat is you cannot put it like on a DEX, and I can also like seize your tokens. So like as an admin, I can take it from wallet A, move it to wallet B, or even take it away from you, right? And so that's like very similar to like an in-game point system, right? But it's represented on chain. And I would go that route if you haven't thought about your tokenomics deeply, because there's no reason to ever rush it. It could be a reason why your game doesn't succeed in the end, or but it could also have the opposite effect. It could be the reason why your game does succeed if you do it very well.
Yeah, I think it needs to be thought out, as you say, from 2 points. One is, how is my token going to make the game fun, right? How is the token used within the game? And yes, of course, a game needs to be fun and this or that, but why are you launching a game? Are you launching a game to have speculators make money and ruin your game? Or you're launching a game for people to have fun and spend time in it and spend their money? So that's the first thing that needs to be designed. How do you enable people to have fun, spend money, and use that token? Then you need to think about the external market to that token if you want to create that is going to be driven by speculators and traders, and make sure that doesn't impact the game itself, right? Because if you then start making the currency be extremely expensive, then how do you expect anybody to be able to buy the currency and play the game? That is just going to ruin the game completely. So it's really important to think about it, I think, in a different way. And it's not about making speculators and traders rich. It's about making a rich experience for the player. So if you start from there, then you can start thinking about what is the value and how do you then drive the tokenomics. But otherwise, I think we are creating this very bad environment for the player and themselves.
Got it. Makes sense. Very interesting. My next question is: you guys provide infrastructure to games. You might have already worked with a lot of games. What are your couple of advice or the lessons that you've learned that if someone is building a Web3 game, because there are a lot of founders that are currently building Web3 games, what can you advise them apart from building on Solana and using Honeycomb Protocol? What are your advice to them on how they can make sure they build the right product?
Yeah, I would say like just take your time. It's like designing anything, right? You should not rush it. Like just because you have FOMO from the market, like really take your time, design it, then start the build process. Also find great co-founders to do your game with you. It helps a lot, not having to do everything by yourself. And then spend a lot of time with the community and the ecosystem, because that's going to be essentially your like, almost like your test group, right? They're your early adopters. They're going to be the first ones testing your game. So really ground yourself within a nice like community and ecosystem.
Got it. You mentioned something about having good co-founders. I mean, that's a very big challenge. People, what I've realized is that you should not go into business with anyone if you don't see yourself working 5 to 10 years. So what is your advice that how do you choose your co-founder? Because I completely agree with you. The journey becomes fun and easier if you have people around you, especially that, that complements your like, they have the skills that you don't necessarily have. So how can someone choose a co-founder? Especially in the Web3 space where everyone is anonymous, everyone is sort of shady. So how do you choose people? Choose co-founders?
Well, I think to me, you need to meet the people. It's one of the things. Karthik and I met in person in Austin at the Solana Hacker House. That's how we first started to interact with each other. And then we did stuff digitally and whatnot. He had met Ghulam in person already, so they had already been working on. I'm a true believer of personal interactions. Being anonymous, I don't think it's, at least within your co-founders, I don't think that's the right way to go. Because at the end of the day, like you said, you're going to spend the next 10 years with that person, right? So you need to know what they like, what they don't like, you need to understand what their motivations are. You need to understand their work ethic, and then look at how do you complement each other. And I think that's key, something that you were saying, right? That complementary set of skills is super important.
How do you figure that out in a short span of time? Or is it something that comes with time? Because for me, my co-founders, I've known them since we were in 4th grade, right? So there's no problem. But some people, they don't have co-founders, right? And they want they want to have a co-founder. So, but you can't really figure out someone in 1 or 2 meetings. It takes time for you to figure out how actually is someone. So, is there any advice on that, or you just need time?
With gaming, it's great because you can work on little games together and see like how you guys vibe. And that's one of the benefits. It's not like a DeFi protocol or a DeFi project that there's like a lot on the line. You just create a fun mini game, as your first project, test the waters, and then go from there.
Got it.
Yeah, it's a little bit like dating, right? You spend a little bit of time, see if you like each other. And I'm married and whatnot, so I'm not in the dating scene for a while, but it's one of those things like somebody sets you up. I think I found that to be pretty good first step into that person knows you and knows that other person and has an idea. Okay, you guys will get along. I think that's one. Try to find some referrals from that. And then if you can't find that, then go to events, go meet the people, spend time with them. It goes back to that personal interaction, because that's when you're gonna realize if you vibe or not. And then, like Karthik said, do some things together and see if there's something there that can actually really work in the long term. Unless you know them since fourth grade and you know that you can trust them and this and that, because that's kind of like the ideal, right? But also you have to be careful, because getting into business with friends can be problematic. So
yeah, I know. I know. Amazing. So, okay, after you've built a team, you found your co-founders, I want to talk about the next two things that most founders struggle with is fundraising and team building. So I know Karthik mentioned that you guys do plan to raise the fund. So can you tell us more about that? Why should someone raise obviously, if you want to build a product that isn't generating revenue, you have to raise funds, unlike the service-based business where you can just get more sales. So what has been your experience in raising fund, and what can you advise to founders who are currently raising funds? Because there are a lot of people, right? And in the past episode, one of the founders who raised $5 million, he was telling me that it's more like dating, where you just have to just like when a girl is choosing a boy, it's like tall, blue eyes, or 6-figure salary, cars, like check boxes. So they're like become tick all the check boxes, have a pitch deck, have a good team and stuff like that. So what has been your experience in fundraising, and what is your advice on people who are looking to raise money in Web3 especially?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the advice I would give is, actually, like, this is my first time, so like, don't take my advice too strongly, right? So this is my experience so far is the relationships you've made in your industry become very valuable when the time is right to raise funds, because one, you rely on them to review your material, to give you advice on strategy, right? So having a good, group of close friends, it helps a lot. Then the next one is don't rush your fundraising. Really take your time on it, and do it when you're ready. So for us, like, we bootstrapped most of the project. We got up to the point where we finally are deploying everything on mainnet, and now we have a very specific reason why we need funds. Right? A lot of people want the funds to be able to build the project out. Rather, you should try to get as much as you can done before you need, to borrow money or to take money. Because once you've taken that money, you have a duty to your investors now, right?
Karthik, there's one question. You said this twice. It's basically don't rush it. I want to know more about it, because most of the founders have to rush it. They don't have other options, right? They're running out of money. They don't have savings, and then their personal gets affected. Maybe in your situation, being patient or taking your time might be helpful, or it can be applied to anyone, because I know it's subjective in your situation, but most of the founders are in a rush. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you have to be really frugal. Like, we got really good at being extremely frugal with our spendings, and that helped us get through a lot of hard situations, especially after like the FTX event, because we had created those systems and like we had been like kind of prepared ahead of time with enough runway. We were able to get through a lot of these like bad situations, right? And I think a lot of founders they kind of cut it way too close with spending. So just be extremely cautious, because black swan events constantly happen, right? So
got it.
I think one of the things to add, right, is that's where the co-founders are so important too, right? And if you can have, especially at the super early stage where you're not going to hire anybody, for the most part, I would say don't quit your job so you have some stability. Do this on, moonlight it, right, with your co-founders. That's kind of like the best approach, right? Find a co-founder that is technical. Both of you are technical. If you're building something, complement each other, where both of you are actually doing the work, right? That's the best way, I think, to start and not be stressed out about money. I'm running out of money. I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And if you can't build, then you have to go fundraise and then push it and then make sure that you have the ability to deliver on that. And that's going to just change the way that you approach the problem. So now you're like, okay, I have to pay this developer team and building, a lot of things now start getting out of your control. So then you have to raise money, and it's all about relationship building, like Karthik said, right? Friends and family, that's kind of where it starts. Go get money from your friends and family. It's a thing.
Okay, so the takeaway here is that first, if you're doing this for the first time and you don't have a lot of money saved up, don't quit your job. Keep doing what you're doing, and then do it as a side hustle. And then get co-founders, or if you're technical enough, build it yourself so you don't have to spend money. And then stay frugal, and cash is king, right? Have cash at all times. So even when your idea doesn't work, or the market, especially in Web3, I mean, we have more blocks fans than the regular market. And just keep at it. And then when you get to a stage where you have a product, I mean, when did you guys decide, okay, this is the time I want to raise? Like, when was that moment? Because you could keep on bootstrapping because you guys had engineering talent, and in your case, you just need to build a product. So why do you? And my question is, why do you need money actually? And then why should founder raise money? Because one thing I've realized, people like, want to raise money, we want to raise money, and then I'm like, okay, why do you need money? They have no idea, and they say stupid things like, okay, you want to run Google ads, okay. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess for us, we reached a point in which, like at the end of last year, where we were working with a bunch of projects. They were coming to an end. We had been building Honeycomb Protocol 2, right? So we had been bootstrapping it from the revenue that we got from the engineering business we had. And we had to make a decision. Do we go get more projects to continue funding this, or do we focus on this full time, right? And we had some indication along the way from the market that we were seeing, that was growing in gaming, the investment that was coming into gaming, and then the product that we had, the feedback and the way that it was working. We were like, okay, so there are some good indicators. And at that point, it was, well, we need funds to do a couple of things. One is continue paying the development team that we have. So it's very clear we're using the money to pay for development. Number two, then, is now once we cover those costs, then we need to focus on growth, right? So going on to having people local in a specific markets, especially in Asia Pacific, is where we want to start pushing the adoption of Honeycomb. So that's the other big chunk of the funds that we're going to use: local activations, providing grants for developers to get started, funding different type of initiatives around our go-to-market. Google Ads and this, well, maybe no, I don't think so. That's not really the way that we're going to reach the developers.
Yeah.
So it's just being there, being at this specific event, finding the developers. So that's really the other big chunk. And then the third chunk is the infrastructure. There is infrastructure costs. There's a lot of server, RPC nodes, indexing. There's quite a bit of just basic infrastructure and back office that you need to pay for. Sometimes people don't realize Google Workspace is quite expensive. You pay per user. You need to start paying for your ticketing system, the way to manage your whole development pipeline. That starts to cost money. So all your back office, also, you need to start planning for all those costs associated. Because once you start going beyond the free trials, or like the two people, or like, oh, we're going to share this account, then it's, we try to share accounts as much as possible, but then there's a point in which, like, okay, we need to stop sharing.
I remember me and my co-founder had a fight over $15 subscription when we were starting out. Because I've been always the one who's been frugal, because again, my goal as a CEO is to make sure we don't run out of money. So that was like, all right, cool. So if I were to summarize, projects or startups really need funding for two things, which is to pay people, right, in your case developers, and the second is to bring in work, which is customers in your case. Okay, that takes me to my next question before we wrap up. As you go to market strategy, how are you acquiring users? Because in your case, it's clear who is your customer, right? But most of the founders don't know who their customers are. So I mean, that question does not apply to you. Like, how did you find out who's your customer? My question is, how are you reaching your customers? And what are your advice on how can founders figure out the go-to-market strategy in Web3, especially because most of them have no clue what go-to-market strategy is even is.
Yeah. So our main focus is going to be actually in APAC because we find that like game developers are much more receptive in that market than in the US. So next is like, how do you activate like the APAC region, right? One, finding like really good partners, like other, gaming companies that are in Web3 that are also aligned with you. Then you just like kind of go hands-on, go into those regions, find distribution channels, right? Make a network. Yeah. And then, kind of do hackathons, game jams, right? Events all over. Try to get as much exposure as you can. Meet all the game studios in those areas, right? Go to a lot of events, whatnot. So,
but that does not guarantee adoption, right? You might throw in a hackathon, get people to build a game on your protocol, but like it's still like an experiment, right? You won't know people who use it.
So we're in a nice situation where Honeycomb kind of like plugs into all the like game engines, right? So we'll be partnering up with those game engines and then also doing like go to market with them. Because one thing. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I have a question, right? So if I was in your position, I would think, okay, I would just partner with Unreal or Unity and then let them, do the distribution. But what's stopping Unity and Unreal building a solution like you? Because that is the question I ask every founder. Like what's your moat?
Yeah. I mean, we've tried to increase our engineering team like beyond like 8 to 10, and it just doesn't work. Like money doesn't actually solve like really hard problems. And there's a quote I read which was, "How are like remarkable things done by teams?" And one of the ways, and it was based on like the fact that if you can focus, your team can focus on a very specific problem and have a lot of experience in that field, then like money cannot like really you can't solve it, right? Even if you threw like $1 billion at it, it's you just can't beat a high performing team. And we're pretty fortunate and grateful to be like on the very edge of Solana development. We'll be the first protocol with state compression on mainnet. So yeah, very excited.
Very nice. So you're saying that even if those companies have the money and the reach, they don't have the focus and the insights that you guys have. That's safe to say?
Yeah, and I also think like a lot of like startups nowadays, at least in Web3, I've noticed it's very like not competing. It's rather like, how can we create a product that's like complementary within the ecosystem? Like there are direct competing products, don't get me wrong. But I think it's changing from Web 2 to Web 3. It's more like, how can we complement each other and lift everyone up, right?
Amazing. I think that's also more common in the Solana ecosystem. But there's always a lot of competition. I think at the end of the day, it's about execution. So ideas are dime a dozen. Can you execute? There's probably a dozen other people that are trying to do the same thing as you are. And there's already an industry that it's there. Why does a startup succeed? It's around execution, it's around that grit, and it's around not giving up, right? Constantly, going out there, looking, trying, and not being afraid of pivoting and move. Like, okay, maybe this is not working. You got to tweak the product until you find that aha moment that creates that explosion in adoption. And then there's two different paths. So there's the B2B path, and then there's the B2C path, right? So to your point, it's like, how do you go to market? They're very different go to markets, right? If you're trying to acquire consumers, it's a very different way than if you're trying to acquire other like another business to use your product. So I think really understanding those tools out there for user acquisition, for example. Now there's new tools that are coming out to acquire Web3 users. That has been a big gap in the tooling or the just application space. Now I think we're starting to see some of those coming out. So that I think it's important, because just doing ads Yeah, it kind of works, but it's also very very expensive, and your cost of acquisition, I think it's not really going to be meaningful just yet, and you're not going to get the right users.
Got it. Two more questions, then we can wrap up. I just had an idea that even though so in our case, right? And again, you guys have been that no matter how good the product you built, right? If the founders that you built the product for could not market or sell it, it's a waste of time. It is a waste of it. In your case as well, you're providing the infrastructure. But the founders that build the games, if they are not able to build a successful game, then how will you consider yourself successful, or you don't care about that?
Yes, that's a great question.
Yeah, you want to answer?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Karthik.
Okay. I was going to say, like, you're kind of taking a bet that the market you're in is in an upwards trajectory, right? When it's in an upwards trajectory, there's going to be more traction. Like, we're, again, grateful enough to be on Solana. We had a very strong conviction early on, and we stuck through it even in the worst of times, right? And that has really paid off. But it's very similar to asking that question, like, why are you on Solana building Honeycomb, right? And for us, like, we think that the ecosystem we're in is the one that has one of the best opportunities in the Web3 space. So thus, building a game and deploying a game has a higher probability of doing well.
My question was that makes sense. My question was around building the right game, building a fun game. I mean, even if you give them the best infrastructure, if the game is not fun, what do you guys do then? So do you provide support to founders on helping figure them out how to build good games as well? Do you provide them that kind of support, or you're not focusing on that right now? Okay, you do that.
That's more on the like. So Turbo Computer is a great example. So they're building a very rich developer ecosystem. In any development ecosystem, it's all about helping each other, finding new innovative ways to make some sort of loop in your game that makes it fun and rewarding for the end user. Like, obviously we cannot be like a GPT for ideas, but we're there to help any games get to market, go to market, as well as integrated Web3.
Makes sense. Do you have any thoughts on that, JP?
I would just add it's a little bit of an art, gaming, right? Because you need to get that right combination of game mechanics and rewards, right? Those need to go hand in hand. But then there's an execution piece around the art, around the lore, there's so many parts to what a good game is, right? So for us, yes, it's important to have successful games in Honeycomb, because if the game is successful, then Honeycomb becomes successful, right? Because it's going to grow with them. So what we are trying to do too is provide reference implementations of some of game mechanics that we know work, that we know are fun, like an idle strategy game. Pretty soon we're going to open source one of the idle strategy games that we've built. So the idea will be to build some of those mechanics that we know work, that have been successful, and point some of those game developers to some of those. But it's really hard to really create a blockbuster game, right? Just look at Activision, look at EA. How many of their games are actually really good? There's that too. So there's a little bit of that, and just I think helping the game developer say also pull the plug sooner rather than later, right? So they're not just iterating on it and maybe let's just pivot sooner rather than later. It's also part of what we can try to help them, but it's really hard. It's a great question, but I don't know if there's like a magic bullet for that.
Makes sense. Amazing. Okay, so I want you guys to share yourself. If someone is watching that as a game developer or wants to build a game, what do they do after watching this podcast? Give them the exact steps to use Honeycomb Protocol. I know it's not as easy as one click, but if you can just guide them. I'll put the link in the description, but I want you to just walk them through.
Yeah, so all of our documentation. For all the game developers out there, go directly to honeycombprotocol.com. You have a button at the bottom for documentation. In the docs, there's a tab called Edge Client, so you can go right in and start learning about all the different tools we have. To stay updated with all the socials, you can go to our Twitter. And then also there's a Discord link on the homepage as well to join our ecosystem and our community. You can go and ask questions directly in Discord, or you can open up a ticket and we'll take care of you. So.
Amazing. Any last advice for founders who are building games on why they should use Honeycomb Protocol? I want you to show yourself.
I would say, one, if you're a founder that wants to build a game, build it on Solana, right? That's your first decision point. Solana is going to give you everything that you need from scaling, from the Web3 benefits and innovation. That's what's amazing, right? So that's your decision when it comes to chain. Number two, when it comes to frameworks, well, you want to develop a game fully on chain or not? Well, your first decision should be, yes, I want to develop my game as much as fully on chain as I want. Three is focus on the gameplay experience and then use Honeycomb to enable you to build that game that you want. So we can take care of all the plumbing for you. And forget about that. You'll be able to use Honeycomb to build the profiles, to build the characters, to build everything that you need to then have your game experience built on top of. So that, I think, would be the best path forward to build a game on Web3.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, Karthik and JP. That wraps up the episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and inspiring as I did. So if you're a game developer building games and want to build in Web3, make sure to check out Honeycomb Protocol. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next episode.